my friend Cheston, talk about all things marketing, business, scaling business, especially in the rehab performance space, which we like to nerd out and do more. And again, the goal of this podcast is just to give you information that we're doing right now to actually help you scale your practice. So, Cheston, how you feeling, bro?
I'm good, man. Love it. I love these calls every week.
I know I get these like so juiced up and amped up. Off camera, we were just talking about like different season going through when it comes to entrepreneurship. And I think it's really good for us to touch upon that just because, we have different phases, different season of life, and it goes the same way when it comes to running a business. Right. And so I kind of stop you before you go into it. So like, why don't you just, take us through your definition of the season, and I'll add into it because we obviously are on the same page when it comes to that.
Well, so just to provide a little context, a good friend of ours, made a post that was a little bit controversial. It's to some people. It was talking about, essentially how as you're starting in business, if you want to be exceptional, you're going to spend a lot of time learning your craft, weekend seminars, taking courses, spending just hours working. He was kind of getting crapped on by the online community, so to speak, the keyboard warriors. Yep. Saying derogatory things. I hope you get divorced. Yep. I hope your wife leaves you. Except, you're a horrible person.
Yeah, horrible things.
Yeah, but I think I think the issue that those people probably have is they just don't understand that. Number one, starting a business is hard. Growing a business is hard. Mm-hmm. It takes a lot of work. It takes a lot of energy. It takes a lot of thought, and there are sacrifices to be made. And so people talk all the time about work-life balance. There really isn't a balance in some ways.
Yeah.
It's like, because you only have so much time, you only have so much energy. And so, yes, you have to prioritize certain aspects of your life during certain what we call seasons. A good friend of ours, Andrew Crozy, talks all the time about how there are seasons to life. There's a wealth building season, there's relationship building season, there's, spirituality seasons, there's, personal development seasons. And so during those times, you are going to spend more time in a particular area of your life because that's the season that you're in. Now, that doesn't mean you're neglecting those other areas, those other critical responsibilities and areas of your life that you have, but you have to prioritize your energy and your focus in those areas that are important at wherever you're at in your life, whichever season you're in. And so if you're starting a business or growing a business, you're probably going to be spending more time focused on the business, working in the business, at work, away from family, away from, outside relationships. And that's okay, because that's what it takes to get where you want to go. Again, that doesn't mean you neglect those other areas, but it's okay to prioritize a particular area of your life for a certain period of time if it's going to help you get closer to your goals. There was a clip I saw of Jalen Brunson, and I don't remember what podcast he was on, but he was talking about when he was younger, his dad told him, he's like, look, you've got three things that you can focus on: basketball, school, or social life. What do you want? And really, ultimately, you can only have two of those three. You can't have all three. So what are you going to focus on? And he's like, well, school, obviously I had to, because I'm in school, it's a requirement for me to be able to play basketball. So school obviously has to be one of those. And then basketball is my other priority. My relationships are, at this point in my life, going to have to take a back seat because I have goals, I have dreams, I have aspirations I want to achieve. And that requires that I put a lot of time into basketball, and I de-emphasize those social relationships. If it's a good relationship, those relationships are always going to be there. But basketball is my dream. Basketball is my vision, my who I am and what I want to accomplish in this life. And so that's where I'm going to prioritize my time. And so as a business owner, it takes the same kind of approach where you have to understand what your different roles are, what your different responsibilities are, what's your dream, what's your vision, what's it going to take to get there, and then you have to prioritize your life around that. Fortunately, I think, based on what our friend says, he's got a great relationship with his wife, and she understands that she's going to have to pick up the slack at home, that he's not going to be there as much as she would like him to be. And as long as they have an understanding, they've communicated that, and I don't want to get into marriage therapy here,
Yeah.
But as long as that understanding is there between whoever's involved in that relationship, it's okay. Like, don't feel guilty about prioritizing getting better at your craft and being exceptional at what you do.
Yeah, dude, I got a couple thoughts on that. And again, shout out to our friend, Jamie Moore. I'm just going to say it, like he's part of our community. And essentially like what he posed was, when you're a new grad, especially in PT, the work-life balance is not going to work if you choose to be great. If you want to craft, your skill set to work with professional athletes, to own your own company one day, you're going to have to invest your time on the weekends. You're going to have to say no to Sunday brunches. You're going to have to, do more than just working the 9 to 5. You have to develop those skill set outside work hours. Right. And it met with a huge backlash just because it's totally contradict what society has been saying, which is you need work-life balance for you to be complete. And, I disagree with that because as I'm grabbing Cody, because, because work-life balance is for people who are just clocking in and clocking out. Like my goal of being a PT and starting my own company was to have work feel like fun.
Yes. If
work feel like fun, then you don't really need to seek out balance as much. Right. And I think the issue with, PTs coming out of school as well is that you just have been a professional student your whole career. You haven't earned anything yet. Like the fact you have a doctorate doesn't mean you get to show up.
Yeah.
Like you're at an entry level. Yep. You have no reps. You have no brand tied to your name yet. People are not going to come in and just pay premium to see you just because you have a doctorate. Right. Mm-hmm. And through my reflection, when I first started, I was working 12 to 8. And then I was side hustling from 6 a.m. to 12. Mm-hmm. And then I was doing work on the weekends, right? It was a grind, but it was understood with my wife because we had that agreement, right? So when you have a right partner to support you, it goes a long way. And the way I say, Christina keeps me so grounded because I tend to be really immersed when it comes to my work. Like I can write content, I can do stuff. I enjoy working. Yeah. That's always my thing. Like it's either working or working out. That's my main thing. And going back to the golf comment we made in the past, like if I have 4 hours, damn, I can do a lot. Yeah, and exactly. it's gonna move needles to the life that I want. And the life I want is to align my personal interests and my professional interests together. Yes. So that day when I come into work every single day, I feel fulfilled, right? Because I know I'm doing good work. Yep. And take it back to Stone Age day. Like, do you think farmers, hunter and gatherers just say, oh, I need a work-life balance? And no, bro, you got to go farm. You got to go hunt. Yeah, exactly. Right. So I think as society, elite marketers and consumerism has made a really good job at telling us that we're inadequate and we're not enough until we have external things, external validation from other people. Yes. And the more grown I am and the more years I have in business, I actually shy away from that a lot more because what I really want is good relationship, for myself with the higher powers and with my wife and with my peers. Mm-hmm. That's all I really want. I want the circle to be small because, to be able to work and grind and talk work when you're not at work is fulfilling to me. And to be able to talk work with my wife, but also talk about like family planning and all of that stuff, things that we want to do together, it's great to me. And it keeps me on my toes all the time, right? Yep. And this lead into what I want to talk about too when it comes to season, because, you have to develop yourself clinically to get good outcome. And then from there, you got to market your business yourself as a brand so that people are coming to you because no one's just going to show up randomly. And then from there, you have to do exact same thing to attract the right talent to come work for you. Yeah. And then you have to nurture the talent, right? So these are different seasons that you have to be into. And, we were talking about different stages of the business, right? And I think if you read this book, Scaling Up, he always talking about there's different peaks and valleys when it comes to businesses, right? I think the biggest one was, when you get from 0 to $250,000, that's your first valley of death, right? Because you're starting at 0. So you have no proof of concept. When you get to $500,000 to $1 million, you're skyrocketed a little bit. And then the next step would be from $1 million to 5 million, which is the next valley of death, right? Which is where I'm currently in, right? And for us to ascend that up, we need good system, good team members, people who can execute the system, right? We talked about this on our last podcast. And most of the people that we work with, they're in that valley of death, that 1 million to 5 million. They want to get there because once you get from 5 to 10, then you start taking off again. And then it dip again when you get past the 10 million mark, right? Yep. The fact that you have guys like Warren Buffett that's still in touch with his business, you have guys like Elon Musk that's still in touch with the business, right? Just show that we all are dealing with the same issue, just this different, phase of the business, yep. Right? So I think the system that you and I have been building was all about how do we combat and get out of that valley of death as soon as possible without losing a lot of resources, i.e. money and time.
Yeah, and being able to have that work-life integration. Because I don't want to leave that topic just yet, because I think it's an important mindset that business owners, that we need to understand, that work-life integration. So work-life balance, I think, is a misnomer. I think it's perfect for the 9-to-5s, those that have a job.
Yep.
Because, and not to say everyone's content, but you're expected to be there for a certain period of time. And then once you leave, ideally you shut it off and you go home and you're with your family, you're doing whatever you want. As entrepreneurs, as business owners, that's just not the way we work. Mm-mm. Like, I know I'm this way, you're this way. Like, I am always thinking about business. I am always thinking about what do I need to do to get to that next level. So whether it's learning new skills, whether it's creating content, like you say, whether it's working on internal systems or processes or things for our clients that we're doing, like, those are things that are always on my mind. And, as a business owner, it just never stops. It never goes away. Personally, like, kudos to you for when you were working those 20 hours a day or whatever it was you're working, and your wife was cool with that because you guys had an understanding of what you were trying to accomplish, where you're trying to get to, and you knew the cost that it would take to get there. And she was cool with that. In my own personal experience, and I'm going to get a little personal here, like, it hasn't always been that way. Like, I love my wife to death. But we have very different mindsets, very different approaches. She just doesn't understand how I can just want to work all the time, how I find this fun. Like, because she loves what she does, but when she's done, like, she unplugs. She doesn't want to think about work. She doesn't want to even touch it until the next morning, when she gets up and she goes again. And she's very successful at what she does. She's amazing at it, but we just have different approaches. Whereas me, like, I have a really hard time shutting it off, of just unplugging. Like, I like to take vacations, but I don't, because I enjoy work so much. To me, it's not work. It's fun, what I do. And so over the last couple of years, like, we've really tried to work on helping her understand my perspective and how it works. This whole work-life integration, because I enjoy what I do. She's like, well, how can you possibly want to work as much as you do? Like, it can't be fun. I'm like, no, but it is fun. Like, I love what I do. And so, in transitioning over to, talking about those valleys of death, so to speak, like, just having that approach, really enjoying what I'm doing, but also having a very clear vision of what I'm trying to build, has helped me kind of stay persistent through those valleys. But in those valleys, where I'm spending my time and where most business owners should spend their time is going to change based on which valley you're in and what you're trying to get to. And like you say, having good systems and processes, number one, having a clear vision of where you're trying to get to. So if you're trying to get to that $1 million mark, like, that's your clear goal, that's your clear target, and identifying what those skills or those gaps that you have that you need to fill in order to get there is absolutely critical. Same thing from 1 to 5. What's that vision? What are the gaps or what are the skills that I'm lacking that are going to help me get there? And so on and so forth, up that staircase of success that we talk about all the time.
Yeah. Just to piggyback on what you said, like, I do, I talk with Christina all the time, and she's an entrepreneur, right, in her setting. So she has the system and the process within the place she's at, but she still has to do a certain work to get her caseload to be at a certain place. Where for me as an entrepreneur, everything is always the buck stop with us and start with us, right? So for me, if I don't, the way I explain to my wife and even my team is that if I don't think about business and I don't think about personal development, I'm going to think about something else. And that something else will be something that is my vices. I'll end up filling those time with something else. Mm-hmm. Right. So I think the issue with this mindset of let's say the 9 to 5 mindset that need to have work-life balance is that by the time that you're done with work, you can unplug, but then you still, you fill yourself and your time with something else, whether it's binge eating on Netflix or something else. We're all addicted to something, yep. Right? I'd rather choose to be addicted to improvement, whether it's always have to start with personal first, because if I don't grow on a personal end, nothing else will grow. Mm-hmm. So I'd rather be addicted to that. I'd rather listen to like audiobooks. I'd rather listen to podcasts. I'd rather talk to you on the phone, right, on my way home, rather than calling like, some friend or acquaintances who I used to go out with. Like, that doesn't do anything for me, right? If most of the conversation has to do with what we used to do in the past, I no longer have interest in that.
Yep. Yeah.
And
that's critical. Yep.
It like, because I want to move forward, right? And for me is I look at my life and the business that I'm building and we're helping building as a giant Lego set. Mm-hmm. And I want to just build the biggest Lego set as much as possible. And when you're in different season, there's certain things that you might have to focus on building this set when it comes to your family first. And then you gonna also build the business set, but it might be 10% less, right? Because we can only pick like everything else. Time is finite, right? So we can only allocate that so much. So I'm not 50-50. I'm 70-30, right? When I'm at work, I'm 70% at work committed. When at home, I'm 70% committed at home, and the other 30% still run in the back of my mind, right? Having, my family, my wife, even Cody reminding me of like what's important at that moment, get me to be like, okay, hey, let me focus on this now, and then I'll come back later. And those time apart from the business actually give me more inspiration of what I'm going to do next, right? So every time I go on vacation, I come back with better ideas. And I couldn't wait to go back to work because like you're just kind of missing that, right? Yeah. And thank God for the iPhone Note app where I can just type down all the ideas I have, so that way I don't lose it at all.
Yeah, no, yeah, I think you're right. I think, and that's one thing I've tried to do over the last couple of years, especially I've got 4 kids, ranging in age from 24 on down to 5. My daughter got married last year. My son's getting married in a couple of weeks. But I have a toddler at home. And so I've had to really get good at learning to shut off, so to speak. Mm-hmm. So, and it's hard to do. But just, when it comes time, when I've committed to be done with work, I've got to be done and just be present for the family. But it's hard to not be thinking about things in the back of my mind. Playing with my daughter, but thinking about some new, campaign we're launching or a funnel that we're building, an automation we're creating. But it's important. So I catch myself, and I've gotten better at recognizing those times and just being able to shut that off, to be able to focus on where I'm at. Because what that does, that allows me then when I go back to it, I'm that much more focused. Like I'm that much more, interested in intent on what I'm doing. And I'm not just simply going through the motions. And so, I think, again, this whole work-life integration thing, it's like, as business owners, we've got to get good at learning to be present where we're at and investing all of our energy and our focus in whatever it is that we're doing at that moment. And if we can do that, then it allows us with those relationships that we have in particular to be able to invest all of our energies in those relationships at that time, because we know that shortly we're going to be back to the other thing that we're really focused on. And we want to be able to focus all of our energies and attention there. It just helps us to be more effective in whichever role it is that we happen to be fulfilling at that moment. Yeah.
And I think, I think it's the guilt, right? Like most of the time when I feel bad, it's like, oh man, I should have been doing this. I should have been more present. And I think you're right. Being able to just be where your feet are, like our friend, like Chris Traveler always say, like, like he's a quarterback for the Jets, right? Or was, and he always say like, you got to be where your feet are in order for you to read plays and all of that stuff. Right. And like, if I'm immersed with my family, I'm with my family. Yep. Like I'm locked in. Yep. And then when I have to do household work, I'm locked in on that. right? And then when I'm at work, I'm also locked in on that, right? So we have that clear understanding. So I guess all in all, as you're building this, you want to look at this like a longest time horizon as much as possible. And, our friend Craig, who came on a couple of weeks ago, he's talking about like, the Simon Sinek infinite game, right? You want to do this for as long as possible. And the message I tell my team is like, hey, we're just farmer. We're just going to farm as many seasons as possible until we can no longer farm. Right. So, the whole is this whole notion is also tied in with the if then fallacy. If I get this, then I can do this. Right. A friend of mine just texted me this morning. He's like, oh, I'm going to grind now so I can enjoy myself in my 40s. And then, I just say, whoa, that's great. And then I also add in a comment, but just remember, Warren Buffett still works in his 90s right now.
Yeah.
And it's not because he has to, it's because he wants to.
Yeah. And
I think because he enjoyed working, that's why he's like still sharp in his 90s.
Yep.
Right. So that's the life I kind of want to, I want to live is I want to be mentally sharp. I want to do this for as long as possible, create as much impact as possible, because at the end of the goal is to impact as many lives as possible as clinician, but also help other clinic owners to do the same thing. Because the more clinic owners we help, the more patient we get to help. So you and I are like aligned in that, where we get to have so much, like our impact scale is going to be high and high each and every year that we have. And the community we're building allow people to come in, shoot each other a text, be like, hey, I'm thinking about this. What do you think about that? So that way you don't have to bombard on your spouse and say, well, I'm looking around this campaign, because sometimes your spouse does not want to hear about it.
My wife has
right?
No interest in hearing about marketing campaigns.
Exactly. So I'll text you and say, hey, let's talk about this.
Yeah.
Right. Yep. Like the thing that we're launching, the thing that we're beta testing right now, like we have a couple campaign that you and I are working on that we're looking to launch, from like affiliation to like events and all of that stuff, which is going to be super cool. But I think that's get the juice flowing. And going back to the value of death is make the value of death more enjoyable.
Absolutely. Yeah. Because when you're in the thick of it, like you have to enjoy yourself. I mean, as odd as that sounds, like you have to find joy in the suffering almost, because it's inevitable. Like you are going to go through a valley of death. It doesn't matter how positive, it doesn't matter how skilled you are, it doesn't matter this, that, or the other. You are going to go through extremely difficult, challenging times. And so you have to maintain that vision of where you're trying to go, realize that it's all part of the process, accept it for what it is, and just get through it as joy, with as big a smile on your face as you can, because ultimately it will end. Like if you have the right mindset, if you have the right approach, you're focused on the right things, you're identifying those skills that you're lacking, you're trying to fill in those gaps, like you will get through it. But it's painful and it sucks at the time you're going through it. And so that's where having that perspective and having that understanding of it's okay to focus right now on those certain things at work, because that's what it's going to take to get where you need to go. Yeah.
And Alex Hormozi made a post about this a couple of weeks ago, where he said the worst place to be right now is between that 1 to 3 million mark, because you're low leverage when it comes to resources, i.e. cash flow, and you're low leverage when it comes to time, right? Because, and I can attest to this, because payroll is higher, because if you have more people, because payroll is higher, your expense go up. But because we have more people, we have to onboard them and train them constantly until that individual and the team that you build can manage the system that you created, right? So it's going back to what we talked about last week, is that if you're in the valley of death, the first thing you want to do, you want to look at operation. You want to see like, where are you fat? Where spot the inefficiency, fix each inefficiency one by one, not all together, because people like to overhaul everything, right? You do it department by department. So for me, the way I structure it in MyoConnect is that, all right, Q1, we just came up with Q4, which is usually really, really busy. When it's really busy, that means operation is going to break down, right? And then we look at like, okay, where do we actually fall off in operation? When we have influx close to 500 visitors a month, what breakdown? And what can we learn from that? How do we improve that? Then we fix that operation error. Then we go ahead and say, when it comes to collection, payment, AR, and billing, what else do we not do well? Then you fix the next thing. right? So now those systems are in place and you educate the team on that, right? Because usually take, 3 to 6 months. Then from there, you move on to the next thing where you say, okay, historically speaking, Q3 is a little low for us when it comes to volume. That means we need to actually do our marketing in Q2. What marketing do we need to do in order to get our message out? So by the time they hear about us, they're actually coming in, and that will offset the issue we're going to face in Q3.
Yep.
Right?
Yep.
So, I mean, it's all going back to just, fulfillment, which is what having to do with clinical care. Are we getting patients better? Right? Operation, where the leaks are and all of that stuff when it comes to, making sure we're running efficiently. When it comes to collection, finances, we got to make sure we're good with that. And then marketing.
Yep.
Right? Just 4 different buckets, and you fix each bucket one at a time. And as you fix them, you have to onboard your people to see if they have the skill set to manage the new system. If not, then you have to have a hard conversation of getting someone better. And I think that's where most of the clinic owners that listening to this are working with us. That's what they're dealing with. They're dealing with that. They know there's an inefficient. They know on paper what they need to do to get their system better. But at the end of the day, the hardest thing that is for them to say is, I don't have a team that's good enough to do these systems, or they're getting internal struggle from their team, right? We talk about this where when we onboard someone into our CRM, you would have a front desk, a clinic manager who refuse to get on board on the new thing, even though it's for the greater good. Because at the end of the day, people with business will succeed in one way. When the greater of the company exceed the greater of the individual. If you have someone who's a team player on your team, they're going to put themselves, say, all right, this might not be good for me on a personal end, but it's good for the company. And if it's good for the company, that means I have more upside for myself. But if you have someone who say, nope, this is only good, it's bad for me, and it's only me only, then that's not a good fit, right? Culture is literally like everything.
Yeah. Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah.
And I think going back to your comment about the quarter, the process you go through on a yearly basis, and it doesn't end there. Just because you've been through it once, as you go through this valley and you get to that next level, what got you here is not what's going to get you there. So all of those processes, all those things that you've put in place, you're going to have to come back and revisit at some point in the future again anyways, because it's going to break again. You're going to have more volume. You're going to have different staff. You're going to have different roles. So that process is never ending in terms of assessing what's going on, assembling the solutions, activating those solutions, then analyzing the results. That's an ongoing, never ending process. And that's one of those skills that as a business owner you want to develop is a process and a framework to go through and identify what those issues are one by one, so you can then go through and systematically solve those as you continue to grow, as your company, as your team continues to expand, and that's how you get from point A to point B in those valleys, is by having that process and that system in place that allows you to recognize what's going on, identify the problems, figure out the solutions, implement those solutions, and then hold your team accountable to make sure that those things are happening. And as you do that, again, that up and down, as you take a step back, I think it's Gary Vee that a lot of times says, slow in the micro, fast in the macro. Or no, slow in the macro, fast in the micro. So in other words, it's not a fast process. So if you zoom out, it looks like a nice ascension that you see. But if you zoom in, all you see is these ups and downs, these peaks and these valleys. And that's okay, because that's part of the process. But again, understanding that and having a framework and a system in place to be able to address those valleys, so to speak, is going to give you that certainty that you need, that confidence that you need to continue pushing your vision forward and helping grow your business.
Yeah, and I love that saying, the slow in the micro and us fast in the micro, slow in the macro. Because when we talk to any business owner, like peers, friend, is they want fast in the macro and fast in the micro. And that's why they end up going to different agency where they're like, hey, I just need new leads. And, oh yeah, let me get new leads by just offering free services or discount services, right? If you're offering a discount services to get someone into the door at $50 and then the next price point jump is $300, that's going to be really hard for conversion, because it's good for the leads problem, but it's not good for the conversion problem.
Yes.
So you're only solving one problem to then create a bigger problem. And that problem, as we talk to so many people who run those ads where they say, oh yeah, come in for like a visit discount at $50. And then by the time they come in for an eval, they say, oh, by the way, if you want this plan of care is going to be $5,000. That's a big jump for people. And if you're a seasoned clinic owners, you know how to convert those patients. But if you have a team who's new and they're not as seasoned as you, when they don't convert those things, it's going to eat away at their moral. And they're going to say, people don't want to feel rejected.
Yep.
Right? And because good PTs having a hard time differentiating when people say no, because they think it's because of their own doing as in their skill set. Yep. Right? Because most of the time, Tony Robbins explained this really well. Most PTs are artists, and artists just like to do their craft. Right? So when you are rejecting the craft, you are inherently rejecting the artist. Mm-hmm. And therefore, the identity that the artist and the PT has a high association with their clinical skill. And therefore, they might not be able to recover from that.
Yeah.
So, I'm always cautious when it comes to offering those low services at discounted price, highly discounted price from the beginning, and just for the sake of solving a lead problem, right? Because at the end of the day, we want good leads that is going to high likely to convert into a long-term plan of care that will high likely to give them the best chance to get the outcome they want. So therefore, they are part of the community and willing to give us more referral because they believe in the product and the branding and the message and the outcome they were able to deliver.
Yeah. Yeah. It's definitely a very myopic approach when you're offering heavily discounted services up front. Because as you said, yes, you're solving that lead problem, but those leads aren't necessarily positioned or qualified or educated then to convert on the back end. And really at the end of the day, it's the back end sales. It's those plans of care that are going to drive revenue for the business, not the $50 evals up front. Those just get people in the door and kind of start to grease the skid, so to speak, and help them along their patient journey. And so you really have to take that macro approach and look at the process overall and look at each step in that process and ask yourself, how well does this help me move them to that next step in the process? Because again, ultimately you want that $5,000 plan of care. You don't just want the $50 lead up front. And so start at the end and work backwards and figure out what is it going to take to get people in the door that's going to allow me to seamlessly move them through their journey with the different resources and steps and processes that you have to qualify and filter and educate them and nurture them and build that relationship. So that at the end of the day, when you present that $5,000 plan of care, they're thinking, man, this is a bargain. Like I'd be stupid not to do it. And so, and it goes that way with anything. Like a lot of times we see a problem and we look for a quick fix to fix this one problem, but we don't think second or third order consequences. Like, yes, maybe we're solving this one problem, but is it creating bigger problems on the back end? Like, am I just creating more work for my team? Am I creating a situation where they're going to get rejected and therefore their morale is going to be low, which then in turn is going to cause turnover because they're going to leave and go somewhere else. So then I'm going to have to put someone in. So it's, as a business owner, one of the skills we have to develop is being able to step back and look at the system or the process or the problem from a much higher view instead of just a single step in that process, because each step leads to the next step, which leads to the next step, which leads to the next step. And so we want to make sure that when we're attempting to solve a problem, we're really understanding what that problem is that we're trying to solve, and we're addressing all of those steps that go into whatever that end objective might be.
Yeah, I love that you said that, are you creating more problem for your team? And I tell my team all the time, like, our job is to solve problems, to get it so good that we create more problem for ourselves to solve. But the problem is better, right?
Yes.
Because we all grow under constraint. And I think, again, going back to big picture society-wise, society have dictated that we need to run away from constraint. And this is why I'm a huge fan of getting people to work out early on in life, because it's the first time that you actually have to introduce constraint into your body And that way, you know what it feels like to rise above those constraints and become stronger from it. So that way you can actually add more constraint into your life, right? It's just never ending. It's a mastery process, right? One of the best documentary I saw was that sushi documentary on Netflix of this guy who has like the best sushi place in Japan. And he does the same thing every single day. He go to a fish market. He handpick the fish out himself. He then make the rice. The rice have to cook to a certain temperature, and it has to get served a certain way. And each year, he just refined that whole process over and over again. And the reason I brought that up because he's opening up a location in New Jersey. So I was like, man, I can't wait to go try that. I don't know if it's gonna be the same, but just the fact that I know the system and the process is there, and he himself is able to take what he calls his art, which is making sushi, into a business. And same thing as the owner of Chick-fil-A. I was listening to this morning, is that he was saying that Shay's improvement rather than just scale. Because if you keep improving your product over and over again, make it the best chicken sandwich ever, you have no option but to scale because there'll be demand on your products. Yep. Right? Where it's completely opposite in any marketing message that we see in when it comes to coaches and all of that stuff, because all they want is like, hey, don't you want to, I on a weekly basis, I get an email say, hey, can Myokinetic handle, 100 new leads? I'm like, we can handle as many leads as possible as long as they're good leads.
Yes.
Right. Yep. And for me this week, just for funsies, I'm going to email those people back and say, can you tell me what is my ideal leads? Can you tell me exactly what you know about my clinic? How many touch points do I need to convert them? What do you think my customer lifetime value is? And what are we good at? And what do you think the objection that those leads going to have? And what campaign do you have? Yep. And I know for a fact they can't answer that because these are generic copy and paste email. And if a clinic owner is sitting there and they're like, well, the money's running low and, I guess I need new leads. So this is why these ads are enticing. But really, when I hop on a call with someone, I say, tell me your evals last month. Mm-hmm. And I looked at it. I said, okay, what's your conversion to plan of care? Oh, it's 30%. I say, what happened to the other 70? Yep. Oh, they go into our drip campaign. I was like, okay, what does that look like? Yep. Oh, they get our weekly email. What does that message say? Mm-hmm. What obstacle? Why did they say no in the first place? How are you helping them overcome that obstacle? Yep. Like, have you built up trust? Yep. Right? And marketing agency are not able to say this because they're not clinician themselves. And because they don't have the know-hows. And the way I'm looking at, and again, I love doing this because I get to talk to you about business skill, but really at the end of the day, I get to talk about like what I love to do, which is being a PT, but also scaling a business at the same time.
Yeah. Yep. Well, and it's again, your vision is building a brand in Myokinetics because you want to have an impact, and your impact reaches beyond Myokinetics because of your interest and your ability to help other clinicians do the same thing in their clinic. Again, we talk about this all the time. There's a huge need in healthcare for people like you that legitimately want to help people get results. Mm-hmm. But sometimes that requires having those hard conversations because getting those results, there's no silver bullet. There's no easy button you can push. It's going to take work on their part. And you are really good at explaining that to your patients, to your target market, that if you do this, this, and this, you will see these results. And so, I think there's a huge opportunity, like you say, to have that impact on your patients, on your community, on everyone overall as we, raise the level of awareness. But again, that requires taking that step back and looking at the problem overall from a macro view and realizing that just getting more leads is not going to solve your ability to help more people. Like there's a whole lot of thought that needs to go into that and a whole lot of work that needs to go into that process to make that, to be able to make that happen successfully.
Yeah. And I think to kind of sum it up too, man, like as you're going through this valley of death and you're trying to scale your business, I think what you really need, and for me, this is from my own personal opinion, what I really need is I need a team of people who inspire me as well. and I want to give, shout out and flowers to my clinical team, Nick, Danny, they grind. Like, we work with high level athletes, high school all the way to professional. They understand that our peak hours is after school, right? So they are willing to grind at night. And guess what? They also are professors at a PT program. So they inspire me because they're always willing to learn, right? When it comes to the clinical stuff. So I lean on them to learn what they learn, right? They lean on me when it comes to like operation, all of these things, right? Because at the end of the day, I want to make sure that my team feel fulfilled. They get inspired by me just as I get inspired by them. And we're all inspiring one another. Dude, we're fighting battles together, right? I mean, I just finished watching Alexander the Great on Netflix, and the difference between Alexander the Great and the emperor of Persia is that he leads from the front. The emperor from Persia is in the middle. He's pointing out like, hey, you move this way, you move this way. But because he's leading in the middle, he's missing the feedback of what's going on in the front line. Alexander's leading from the front, so he can adjust almost immediately, and he can spot an opening much faster than the emperor of Persia. And that's why he's able to conquer, massive amount of land, right? Massive amount of territory. So like that's the biggest thing. So I guess to sum it up, right? The season of life is definitely important. It's good to have a clarity to say, hey, here's where I'm at in life and in business, and communicate that with your spouse. And then from there, have a clear understanding. So that way, no matter what society say, right? Every time when Christina's friend brought anything up about me working too much, all that stuff, she understood. She said, we're good. You don't have to worry about us. We're clear on that, right? And vice versa. Because what you're doing, you're not allowing outsiders who does not understand the goals and the vision you have for your family to dictate what your family needs to be. Because if they were content with their own family, they would not be coming out and give you advice, because they would just focus on their family.
Yeah. No, that's so true. Yeah. It's all about having that clear vision, having clear understanding internally with yourself, but also with any important relationships that you have. And then being able to take that, being able to zoom out and see the big picture, whether it's a conversion problem to evals, or whether it's just a bigger problem, another problem in the clinic with staffing or with team or with whatever, being able to zoom out and see the big picture, identify all the parts, and then be able to zoom into the micro and to be able to address and solve each of those issues. I think all of that plays really well together. The ability to zoom out, see the big picture, but then also zoom in when necessary and focus on those certain aspects, and just be okay with putting all of your energy and your attention where it needs to be for whatever point in your life or your career, your business you're at. Being okay with that. Like, as long as you have that clear vision, you're trying to go, and you have a clear understanding of what it's going to take to get there, and you have the buy-in of those people that are important to you, that are going to go along with you on that journey, man, that's what it takes to be successful today.
Yeah. And guys, to wrap it up, right? If you're in the valley of death and you feel alone, book a call, hop on a call, talk to Cheston and I. Honestly, we love this stuff. And we would love to just help you, help more people, and create a massive impact scale that you can ever imagine, especially if your heart is in the right place and you want to really leverage your skill set and the team that you have. We would love to help you. So click the link on the show note, and we would love to just discuss this with you and then just see where it takes us. So, hey man, Cheston, thank you so much, bro. Another great episode.
Always love
so we'll see you guys next week, and hopefully we get to chat soon. Take care, everyone.